A Denton County bridge is the focus of a terrifying ghost story. Goatman's Bridge is a 138-year-old structure connecting the cities of Denton and Copper Canyon.
Believe it or not, but the Goatman Bridge has been one of the viral places and headquarters of horror and thrill-loving content creators and just curious locals. The demonic figure seen in the bridge has caught the attention of the world. Everybody is wondering what's the story behind this haunted place in Denton, Texas. Is it simply ghost lore? Or there's a more horrifying history beyond the hearsays that circulated for many decades? You might want to watch with a friend, because we're about to discover something that might wake you up at midnight. The Old Alton Bridge. There's something uniquely terrifying about the kinds of places that look totally ordinary during the day, but become nightmare fuel the moment the sun goes down. Goatman's Bridge, officially known as the Old Alton Bridge, is one of those places. It's located just outside Denton, Texas, nestled in a wooded area that seems quiet, even peaceful at first glance. But spend enough time there, especially after dark, and that peaceful feeling turns into something else entirely. Goosebumps start rising for no reason. You feel like you're being watched. You might hear footsteps behind you, even though no one's there. And if the legends are true, those footsteps might belong to something that was never human to begin with. The main story that surrounds Goatman's Bridge is chilling on multiple levels, not just because of its supernatural implications, but because of its very real human tragedy. According to local lore, back in the 30s, a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn was known in the area for his honesty, his hard work, and the quality of his livestock. He was doing well enough that he hung a sign on the bridge advertising his goat business. But in the Jim Crow South, a successful black man was often a target. One night, a group of Ku Klux Klan members took him from his home, dragged him to the bridge, and hanged him over the side. When they looked down to make sure he was dead, the noose was there. But the body was gone, vanished without a trace. According to the most popular tales, the creature at Goatman Bridge is a terrifying figure, with the upper body of a man and the lower body of a goat or a beast, sometimes said to have glowing red eyes and an axe in hand. Some people say they've seen this figure standing on the bridge late at night, or darting through the woods nearby, while others report hearing strange noises, like blood-curdling screams or eerie, unnatural growls. There are even stories of the Goatman attacking cars, smashing windshields with his axe, or chasing people away from the area. These sightings often happen during late-night visits, when the atmosphere is already charged with a spooky vibe. Soon after Washburn's disappearance, people started seeing strange things near the bridge. A figure, part man and part goat, with towering horns and glowing red eyes, was spotted in the woods. People heard hooves clacking across the old boards of the bridge, even when it was completely empty. Some said they saw something standing in the trees, just beyond the reach of their flashlights, only for it to vanish the moment they looked directly at it. Over time, the creature came to be known as the Goatman, and it became a symbol of the dark energy that clings to the bridge and the woods around it. But the story doesn't stop with a local legend. The really terrifying part is how many people who've visited Goatman's Bridge come away with stories of their own, stories that match up in eerie, unsettling detail. People report being physically affected, sudden headaches, dizziness, nausea, or unexplained scratches on their skin. Some claim to hear voices, low, gravelly whispers coming from the trees, sometimes speaking their names. There have been reports of eyeshine deep in the forest. Not the normal kind you'd expect from a raccoon or a deer, but red, glowing eyes hovering at human height. And then there's the smell. Witnesses often describe a foul, sulfuric odor, like burnt matches, sewage, or rotting meat that seems to appear out of nowhere and disappear just as quickly. Paranormal investigators and thrill seekers have flocked to the bridge for years, trying to capture proof of the Goatman. Some have set up cameras and caught strange anomalies, floating orbs, unexplainable shadows, even figures moving in the background. One group claimed they saw the Goatman itself, a towering, horned beast that let out a guttural scream before vanishing into the woods. Another investigator passed out cold after hearing a disembodied voice whisper in his ear. When he woke up, his back was covered in scratches he couldn't explain. His footage? Corrupted. Is it something you would believe? Here's where things get even weirder. Some people believe that what haunts the bridge isn't just the spirit of Oscar Washburn or some half-goat cryptid. They think it's something much older, much darker, something demonic. This idea has gained traction among demonologists and paranormal researchers who point to the bridge's history of violent deaths, strange symbols carved into the trees nearby, and the overwhelming sense of dread that hits people out of nowhere. According to them, the Goatman might just be a mask, something the demon uses to lure people in. And once you've opened that door, it doesn't always close behind you. There are countless stories of people who say something followed them home after a visit to Goatman's Bridge. They report seeing shadow figures in their house, having sleep paralysis, and hearing voices at night. Pets start acting strangely, growling at empty corners, refusing to enter certain rooms. One woman claimed that after her visit, her daughter started speaking in a low, growling voice while sleepwalking, uttering words she had never learned. Others have described dreams where the Goatman stands at the foot of their bed, unmoving, watching silently with those blazing red eyes. What adds to the horror is that the bridge itself hasn't changed much. It's an old iron truss structure surrounded by thick forest, with trails leading off into the woods that seem to swallow sound. During the day, it might just look like a good spot for a hike or a photo shoot. But those who've been there at night will tell you that everything feels different. The air gets heavier. The silence becomes oppressive. You get the unmistakable feeling that you're not alone, and whatever's with you doesn't want you there. Some visitors have even tried taunting the Goatman, daring it to show itself. Bad idea. Many of those people report an immediate response: rocks thrown from the woods, sudden chills, even being physically shoved or scratched. There's a story about a guy who tried to summon the Goatman by standing in the middle of the bridge and yelling, "I don't believe in you!" Moments later, his flashlight flickered out, and he felt something run past him, fast, heavy, and invisible. When the light came back on, his friends said he was pale as a ghost and refused to speak for the rest of the night. Whether you see the Goatman as a ghost, a demon, or just a powerful urban legend, there's no denying that Goatman's Bridge has a certain energy to it, one that doesn't play by the rules of our world. It's a place that feels like it remembers. It remembers violence, hate, fear, and death. And maybe, just maybe, something out there feeds on that memory. Something with hooves, horns, and a hunger that's never satisfied. If you ever find yourself in Denton, Texas, and the sun is setting, and someone suggests a quick trip to the old Alton Bridge, maybe think twice, because once the darkness settles over those trees and the stars come out, you're no longer just a visitor. You're part of the story now, and the Goatman is always watching. Or just maybe, the blame should be put on the social media influencers. Pop culture of Goatman's Bridge. Goatman's Bridge has become a full-blown pop culture phenomenon. Over the years, this creepy, supposedly haunted spot has transformed from local legend into a hotspot for thrill seekers, paranormal investigators, YouTubers, and ghost hunting TV shows. What started as a scary story passed around campfires has grown into something way bigger. And the pop culture world just can't seem to get enough of it. The legend itself is rooted in folklore that sounds straight out of a horror movie. The story goes that a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn was lynched by the Ku Klux Klan after calling himself the Goatman. According to the tale, the Klan threw him off the bridge, but when they went to retrieve the body, it had mysteriously vanished. Since then, locals claim to have seen a half-man, half-goat creature roaming the woods near the bridge, glowing eyes, hooves, and all. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, the story is chilling and perfectly designed for viral attention. Goatman's Bridge has become a staple on paranormal TV shows like Ghost Adventures, where Zach Bagans and his crew brought their usual dramatic flair to the site. Their investigation included creepy EVP recordings, night vision shenanigans, and lots of running around in the dark. These shows helped boost the bridge's haunted reputation and brought it to a national and even international audience. Now, people travel from all over just to visit the bridge, hoping to catch a glimpse of something strange, or at least make a spooky TikTok. Social media has played a massive role in how the legend continues to thrive. Platforms like TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram are packed with amateur ghost hunters filming their own midnight visits to the bridge. Some lean into the comedic angle, jump scares, fake screams, and shaky camera work, while others really try to document something paranormal. The hashtag Goatman's Bridge leads to a rabbit hole of videos showing people walking into the woods, setting up spirit boxes, or just getting genuinely freaked out by the eeriness of the place. It's become sort of a rite of passage for paranormal fans. Beyond just videos, the legend has seeped into fiction and other creative outlets. There are horror short films, creepy podcasts, and even urban fantasy books that reference Goatman or similar cryptid-like creatures. The blend of racism, folklore, and supernatural revenge gives the story more weight than a typical campfire tale. It's not just scary, it's also rooted in real historical trauma, which makes it hit differently. Some creators have even started questioning whether it's ethical to treat this kind of legend purely as entertainment, given the potentially real origins of the violence behind it. What's really interesting is the mix of tones you find in this kind of content. Some people treat it seriously, setting up spirit boxes, asking the Goatman questions, or showing supposed paranormal evidence with the gravity of an old-school ghost hunter. Others go in with humor, making jokes, faking jump scares, or just roasting each other when someone gets too scared to cross the bridge. It's this blend of fear, comedy, and genuine curiosity that makes Goatman's Bridge such a rich subject for user-generated content. It's not about whether the ghost is real or not. It's about the experience of being there and sharing that moment with an audience. This digital folklore also evolves way faster than the old stories ever could. Every video, every retelling, adds a new twist to the Goatman myth. Maybe someone claims they heard a growl. Maybe another swears they saw hoof prints. These small additions spread, pick up momentum, and suddenly become part of the story. Even if they weren't originally there, it's folklore happening in real time. And because the internet never forgets, these moments are archived forever, meaning that a single viral video can shape the legend more than decades of whispered stories ever could. What makes this even more fascinating is how accessible it all is. Anyone with a phone and a flashlight can be part of the story. You don't need a production budget or a film crew. Just hit record, upload, and you're adding your own voice to the Goatman legend. That democratization of storytelling is part of what makes modern ghost stories so powerful. Goatman's Bridge doesn't just belong to Denton, Texas anymore. It belongs to anyone who watches, shares, or adds to the myth online. Goatman's Bridge has become a living, breathing story that keeps growing with each post and video. It's spooky, yes, but it's also creative, funny, dramatic, and a little chaotic. That's the magic of user-generated content. It turns ghost stories into shared experiences and local legends into global conversations. Whether you're filming EVPs or just laughing at your friend's over-the-top reaction, you're part of something much bigger, a new way of telling old stories. It has transcended its physical form. It's more than just wood and rust. It's an idea, a challenge, a myth that keeps evolving. Whether you see it as a genuine haunting or just a fun weekend scare, its place in pop culture is firmly cemented. People love to be scared, but they also love to explore the unknown, and Goatman's Bridge offers both. With every retelling, every TikTok, every ghost hunting episode, the legend grows, and so does its hold on our collective imagination. However, is this even acceptable to the sound minds nowadays? The ethics of storytelling, surrounded by dense woods, creaking beams, and whispers of dark rituals and sightings of a half-man, half-goat creature. The bridge has become a magnet for thrill seekers and ghost hunters. Over the past few decades, it's made its way into horror podcasts, YouTube documentaries, paranormal reality shows, novels, and short films. Its mysterious vibe is perfect material for the kind of storytelling that blends local lore, historical eeriness, and outright terror. But once you start peeling back the layers of the Goatman legend, things get complicated. One of the most circulated origin stories claims the creature was once a successful black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn, who lived near the bridge in the 30s and became the devilish Goatman. This version doesn't just offer spooky vibes, it ties the ghost story to America's violent racial history, particularly in the Jim Crow South. Now here's where we hit an ethical crossroads. It's one thing to explore creepy folklore or invent fictional monsters, but what happens when the root of a ghost story is a real legacy of racial violence? Is it okay to turn a tale like this into a tourist attraction, podcast episode, or social media content? Can we enjoy the thrill of the story while ignoring its historical context? In many ways, this speaks to a broader issue in horror and folklore, the blending of fact and fiction, and how we treat the stories of marginalized communities. It's not uncommon for horror to draw from real-life horrors. In fact, that's part of what makes it so effective. The best scary stories often tap into our collective fears, whether it's fear of the dark, the unknown, or the deeply human fear of injustice and death. But when creators and audiences use a story like Goatman's Bridge purely for entertainment, without acknowledging where that story comes from, there's a risk of erasure, of turning something serious into something shallow. This kind of commercialization isn't new. Folklore from all over the world has been turned into Halloween specials and horror movies for decades. But in recent years, there's been more public conversation about ethical storytelling, especially when it involves communities who've been historically oppressed or silenced. Some critics ask, is it ethical to profit off legends rooted in trauma, especially racial trauma, without giving space to the real pain behind them? If Oscar Washburn was a real person, what does it mean that his story is now reduced to a haunted bridge destination for ghost tours? The reality is that folklore and history are often tangled together, and we're still figuring out the right way to navigate that. For some people, telling ghost stories based on real events is a way of keeping history alive. It's a method of cultural memory, where legends preserve truths that textbooks sometimes leave out. But for others, especially descendants of the communities involved, it can feel like exploitation, especially when those stories are retold without care, research, or respect. There's also the question of whose voices are centered in these stories. Often, legends like Goatman's Bridge are retold by outsiders, paranormal investigators, horror creators, influencers, who may not have ties to the Black community or knowledge of the region's history. When those storytellers change or water down the narrative to make it more marketable or shareable, they may unintentionally erase the most meaningful parts. For instance, some versions of the Goatman story skip over the lynching origin entirely, turning the creature into a generic cryptid or demon, stripping the tale of its deeper cultural resonance. That's not to say people shouldn't be allowed to tell scary stories. Horror has always been a way to process fear, confront taboos, and explore uncomfortable truths. When used responsibly, it can actually highlight issues like racism, injustice, and collective trauma. Think of films like Get Out or Candyman, which use supernatural horror to explore very real racial anxieties and histories. These stories don't just scare people, they make them think. They invite deeper conversations. That's the kind of horror that respects both the audience and the subject matter. So, what does that mean for Goatman's Bridge? Maybe it means that if you're telling the story, tell the whole story, not just the spooky part, but the historical part too. Talk about why the idea of a black man becoming a ghostly avenger resonates so deeply. And if you're just visiting or consuming the story for fun, take a moment to reflect on the real history behind the legend. Maybe even research the area, or support creators and historians from the local Black community who are telling their own stories. Goatman's Bridge is more than just a place to get creeped out. It's a lens into how we tell stories, whose stories we tell, and what responsibilities come with that. It reminds us that horror isn't just fiction. Sometimes, it's a shadow of something that really happened. And if we're going to keep telling these stories, and we will, because they're powerful, we owe it to the people behind them to tell them with honesty, respect, and care. But sometimes, people are just obsessed with horror stories and mysteries that boggles the mind. Are you a fan of true story terrifying tales too? The broader cryptid and haunted place trend. America's fascination with the paranormal isn't just a quirky pastime. It's woven into the fabric of the culture itself. For generations, stories of cryptids, ghosts, and haunted places have filled the airwaves, campfire conversations, and now the internet, fueling a nationwide obsession that goes far beyond simple entertainment. These stories tap into something primal, our curiosity about what lies beyond the edge of understanding, and our collective fear of the unknown. From Bigfoot wandering the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest to Mothman's eerie, glowing eyes flashing over the bridges of West Virginia, and even the digital age horror of Slender Man stalking the virtual world, these legends are more than just spooky tales. They're a kind of modern mythology. They reflect regional histories, cultural anxieties, and shifting social attitudes, becoming a way for communities to process their collective fears, identity, and memory. This fascination isn't limited to just the most famous figures, though. Hidden within this broader cryptid landscape are more complex and often overlooked creatures like the Goatman, whose story blends folklore, race, and Southern Gothic horror into something truly unique. The broader trend of cryptid and haunted place lore in America follows an interesting pattern. These legends tend to spring from very local places, rooted in specific geographies and histories, and then grow into something much larger. Mothman, for example, is inseparable from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and the tragic collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. For many, Mothman became a symbol of impending disaster, an omen that captured the town's collective trauma. Bigfoot, on the other hand, often represents a nostalgic connection to nature and wilderness at a time when American landscapes are rapidly changing. Slender Man, a much more recent addition, reflects contemporary anxieties about technology, anonymity, and the Internet's power to shape reality and fear. Each cryptid embodies more than just fear of monsters. They become vessels carrying social commentary, regional identity, and emotional resonance. In this landscape, the Goatman's legend stands out because it's not just about a scary creature lurking in the woods. It's about the tangled intersections of folklore, race, and historical trauma. The Goatman is a cryptid that wears many hats. Unlike Bigfoot or Mothman, who often inspire curiosity or awe, the Goatman is frequently portrayed as a more violent, monstrous figure, sometimes an axe-wielding hybrid beast, sometimes a cursed human, sometimes even a victim of horrific experiments gone wrong. His stories are deeply embedded in Southern Gothic traditions, where decaying plantations, haunted woods, and broken communities form the backdrop for tales of horror and moral reckoning. In places like Maryland and Texas, the Goatman legend often comes with a dark history involving human cruelty, systemic violence, and racial tensions. Some versions say the Goatman is the ghost of a lynched African-American man, while others paint him as a creature created by scientific hubris or social rejection. This layering of origin stories reveals how the Goatman is more than a monster. He's a symbol of marginalized and silenced histories, a walking embodiment of injustice and alienation. What makes the Goatman story especially compelling and complicated is how it functions as both a figure of fear and resistance. In folklore, monsters are usually just monsters, threats to be vanquished or avoided. But the Goatman carries a deeper emotional weight. His existence within local lore suggests that communities are wrestling with difficult pasts they don't fully want to confront. The Goatman becomes a kind of metaphorical other, a figure that embodies the things people fear to acknowledge, whether that's racial violence, social exclusion, or the consequences of human cruelty. But paradoxically, because he persists in stories and sightings, he also becomes a form of resistance. By haunting the margins of these places, the Goatman refuses to be forgotten or erased, just as the histories and people he represents have struggled to be seen and heard. In this way, the Goatman shifts from a simple bogeyman into a symbol of survival amid oppression, a monstrous figure with a tragic, complex identity. This unique place the Goatman holds within American folklore also reflects broader trends in how paranormal stories are evolving today. We are living in a time when ghost hunting and cryptid chasing aren't just hobbies. They're a form of cultural expression. Podcasts, social media groups, and indie documentaries are bringing new life to old legends, but they're also reshaping them. Today's audiences often want more than thrills. They want stories that resonate emotionally and socially. They want the monsters to mean something. In that context, the Goatman is perfectly suited to the moment. He's messy and ambiguous, carrying layers of meaning that invite reflection rather than just fear. Unlike the relatively straightforward mystery of Bigfoot or the viral creepiness of Slender Man, the Goatman challenges us to think about how history, race, and folklore intersect in unexpected ways. He demands that we consider the cost of our fears and who those fears are really about. Looking at the Goatman alongside other American cryptids also highlights how folklore is deeply tied to place and identity. While Bigfoot might feel like a symbol of the wilderness and Mothman an omen of tragedy, the Goatman is inseparable from the specific social and historical textures of the South and Mid-Atlantic regions. Denton, his story, weaves in the legacy of slavery, scientific experimentation, and rural poverty. This makes the Goatman not just a ghost story, but a kind of cultural artifact, a way that communities encode their traumas and survival strategies into folklore. He reminds us that monsters are never created in a vacuum. They are shaped by the fears, hopes, and histories of the people who tell their stories. The Goatman is more than just a scary tale to share on a dark night. He's a living symbol of America's tangled relationship with its past and its monsters. He challenges us to look beyond the surface of folklore and consider the social realities that give birth to such creatures. In a country obsessed with the paranormal, haunted places, and cryptids, the Goatman stands out as a uniquely layered figure, one that embodies fear, memory, and resistance all at once. He's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't just out there in the woods, but right inside the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we've done. And maybe, just maybe, by listening to these stories more carefully, we can begin to understand those fears and histories better, and maybe even heal a little. So, is the Goatman demon real? Despite all the dramatic accounts, there's no solid evidence that a real demon, or any kind of creature, actually lives at Goatman Bridge. The stories seem to be a mix of folklore, urban legend, and maybe even some people playing pranks or misidentifying animals or shadows. Over the years, the legend has grown bigger, fueled by word of mouth, social media, and late-night daredevil adventures. It's the kind of story that feeds on itself. Someone hears a creepy tale, decides to visit, sees something they can't explain, and then shares their own version. Before long, the legend becomes part of local culture, and the line between fact and fiction blurs. What's more, the Goatman legend ties into a long tradition of folklore creatures that mix fear and fascination. The idea of a half-man, half-goat figure has roots in mythology, and the demon label just adds to the mystique. For many, the Goatman isn't necessarily real in a literal sense, but he represents something else: the fear of the unknown, the thrill of a scary story, and maybe even a symbol of local identity. People are drawn to places like Goatman Bridge because they want to experience that adrenaline rush, to be part of a story that connects them to their community's spooky past. From a scientific and logical standpoint, probably not. There's no proof of an actual creature lurking under the bridge. But the legend itself feels very real to the people who tell the stories, visit the site, or grow up hearing about it. In a way, that's what makes Goatman Bridge so fascinating. It's not just about whether the monster exists, but about the stories we tell, the fears we share, and the way these tales bring people together, whether through campfire scares or late-night ghost hunts. The Goatman might not be a real demon, but his legend lives on, haunting the imagination and the woods around that old bridge. Do you believe in the horrific stories of the Goatman Bridge? Drop your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.